Let me introduce myself. I'm Nitin Madhok. I work with Clemson University as a systems developer. Sorry about the sore throat. So Salt Lake City is pretty cold and I haven't been feeling really well. So I'm going to be talking about how you can orchestrate instances to AWS and OpenStack. So I picked a private cloud and a public cloud so you can sort of understand the difference. I'm going to be using the Salt Cloud. A lot of people use Salt. They don't know about the functionality of Salt Cloud or what they can do with it. So I'll be helping you set up. So basically, these are the things I'm going to be covering. What Salt Cloud is, some of the basic terminologies that I'll be using. Those are providers, profiles, maps. And then in the end, a live demo using Salt Cloud. That's a major part of this talk, so we're going to be spending a lot of time on that. So what's Salt Cloud? Has any one of you used Salt Cloud? Okay. So it's basically a public cloud provisioning tool by SaltStack. It integrates Salt with other cloud providers. It makes modeling and provisioning of minions quick and easy. So Salt Cloud was initially developed keeping in mind. So if you have used SaltStack, when you set up a new minion, you have to accept the keys on the master. So the idea behind Salt Cloud was you'll have instances and the keys get accepted automatically on the master. That was the original idea. It did turn out to be something more than that. So you can also deploy instances using it. And then they integrated it with a lot of clouds. Some of them being AWS, OpenStack, Rackspace, DigitalOcean, and many more. So the basic terminology. You'll hear me throughout the demo using words like providers, profiles, not maps, but providers basically contain the cloud provider specific information. So it depends on what provider you set up. As an example, if you set up a AWS provider config file, you'll need things like the ID, the access key, the region, whereas OpenStack might need the endpoint, your compute service name, compute region name, things like that. Its default location is at etc salt cloud providers. You can have custom configuration also in cloud.providers.d folder. Profiles, on the other hand, they contain VM specific information. So things like what image, CentOS, Red Hat, what size. So like AWS has micro, tiny, OpenStack has tiny sizes. So what size you want, what username to log in with, what keys to use, things like that. Its default location is at etc salt cloud profiles. In the same way as providers, you can put custom config for profiles in etc salt cloud profiles.d. I won't be talking about maps, but they're fairly straightforward. They can be used to specify multiple VMs. So let's say if you want a cluster, if you want to deploy an application to a cluster using Salt Cloud, so you can define a map, which is just plain YAML. So have the file in etc salt cloud.map or cloud.maps.d, and then just have the name of your profile, and then specify what VMs you want to use that profile. So if you run it in parallel mode, it's going to deploy, like, let's say 5 servers using the same profile. So, and then you can deploy an application to them. So any questions till now, or should I proceed to the demo? Okay. So I'll be setting up AWS first. If you go to aws.amazon.com, it gives you an option to sign up for free. So you can have a free account for 1 year. It has certain limitations, like you can only have one EC2 instance and like maybe one S3 server. Should be like under certain number of hours every week, otherwise it gets charged to your credit card. So I signed up for it. As you can see, I don't have any instances if I go here on instances. So I'm going to be logging to my server. So this is a fresh server that I created using CentOS 6.5 image. Doesn't have any packages installed, just the basic. So I'll be installing Salt Cloud. I'll need Apple release for that. Is that visible? Is that visible to the people in the end? Okay. So installing Apple release. Installing Salt Cloud. So really all packages are the same. If you consider Salt Master, Salt Minion, Salt Cloud, they're packaged differently. They ship with the same code, only the binaries are different. So that's why they've created like a package for each one of them. So there we have Salt Cloud set up. Now next we're going to configure our Amazon account with Salt Cloud. So we're going to be putting the custom configuration there. I'm creating a config file, providers.config or conf. Just plain YAML. Now, if you go on the docs for Salt Cloud, so just search on Google Salt Cloud, it'll get you to this page. It's pretty good documentation about all the cloud providers. So since we're using Amazon, we'll be doing EC2 first. This sort of has the basic setup of the things you need. So I'm going to be copying this whole thing. So here, minion, and then under that we point master. So what basically Salt Cloud does is, it's going to deploy the instance and then install Salt using Bootstrap Salt script on your minion. So that it also has Salt and becomes a minion of the master. So we're going to be giving the IP of the master that we want it to get back to. So in my case, I have a floating IP for this server. You can set grains. We won't need that, so I'm going to be removing that. I'll be using the public IP interface in Amazon. I'll be showing you how to use private IP interface in case of OpenStack. So we'll keep that. We don't need the Windows credential validation, so I'll remove that. Now this is the ID and key to use with EC2. So if you go back to your management console, click on your name, go to security credentials, go to access keys. You can create a new access key there. So that's my access key ID. Just make sure you download the file or put it someplace, because if you forget it or if you don't have access to it, there's no way you can get it back. So you'll have to create a new access key every time. So that's my ID. That's the access key. It doesn't matter. So now I need to put in the private key and its name right here. So I've already created a private key. For those of you who want to create one, just go to your dashboard, EC2, go to key pairs, and then just go on create key pair, and it'll create a key pair for you. Just put in a name. It'll download a private key file for you, and it'll keep the public portion of it on the management console. So in my case, I already have the private key. I'll just be copying it to the server. You can also SCP from your local machine or wherever you've downloaded the file. Since I manually created it, I'll have to change the permissions to be only readable by the current user. So 400 on that. Go back into the providers file, put in the path, put in the name of the key, all right. Next to the security group. So if you go back to the dashboard, by default there'll be one security group called default, which is basically for it'll have inbound and outbound traffic. You'll have to create one for SSH. You can either add it to the default security group or create a new security group and add a rule to that. This is basically opening port 22 so that Salt Cloud can contact the server when it wants to install the bootstraps, when it wants to install Salt using Bootstrap. So if you want to install a new server or create a new server, we want default and SSH groups to be there. So we're going to be putting that. We can have default regions. So in Amazon, it has like various regions. In my case, this is the region that I have, US East, North Virginia. I can change to any other region. And then it has these availability zones. By default, it's East 1B if you're in the East, and depends where your location is. So I'm just going to skip that. Next is the SSH username. If you're using an Amazon image, it's a different username. Sometimes it's root, sometimes it's cloud user, sometimes it's EC2 user. So you can specify it here by default, but we'll be specifying this in the profile since it's specific to the server. So I'll remove this. I haven't configured an IAM profile, so I'm going to remove that. Our provider is going to be EC2. I'll be putting some new tags here. So delete all volumes on destroy. I'll set that to true. So when I destroy the instance, it's going to delete all volumes attached to it. Also, rename on destroy. Set that to true. So when you destroy your instance, on Amazon, it actually doesn't destroy it. It sort of terminates it, but it still shows up for a while. So it's better to rename it. So what it does is it renames and then destroys it. So if you create another instance with the same name, it won't complain about the instance already being there. So I'll set that. So that's the information we need in the providers file. Now I'll be setting the profile for this. So I create a profiles.conf. I do AWS. Let's do it for CentOS. The provider is going to be the name of the provider that we put. So if you notice here, that's AWS default in our case that we put. So here I'm just going to put AWS default. Now we need to specify the image, the size. We wanted to delete SSH keys. So you can look up the image in the documentation for Amazon. Amazon names, all cloud providers name its images differently. So I looked up the instance name, the image name for CentOS. So it's AMI 8D75 6F E4. And size, we're going to be using T1.micro. Once you set the provider, what you can do is you can do Salt Cloud and then run a query against, you can either list images it provides or list sizes. So as an example, so that is all we need. If I do Salt Cloud, list sizes, and then specify the name of my provider, so it's AWS default. So there it specified all the sizes that Amazon provides us with. So you can see M1 Medium has these many cores, that much disk. I chose T1.micro, which is the basic, and it won't build up the bill on your account if you're using a free account. So This is good for a test. Similarly, you can do list images. I won't be running that because Amazon has a lot of images. So it takes about a minute to populate all the data, and it's going to flood my terminal. So now we have the profile set up. Now we want to deploy a server into Amazon. So I'll be doing Salt Cloud -p to list a profile. If I was using a map, I would have specified -m and then the name of the map. Then we specify the name of our profile. So that was AWS CentOS, and then the name of the instance. So my first instance. I'll be running that in debug mode so you can see what's happening behind. So it built a dictionary. It's trying to authenticate and sending the data to Amazon. It didn't like the way I specified the security group. So one thing you'll notice if you're using multiple cloud providers, if it's called something, if a keyword is called something in one provider, doesn't mean it means the same thing in another provider. So you'll have to check what exact way to do it is. In this case, yeah. So that's why I put in a link to follow me on GitHub. So I'll be creating a new repository and putting all the content there.
Can this command be run? I'm new to Salt. I saw test equals true. Could you run it to sort of have it validate your configurations so that it might have caught the YAML inconsistency? It seems like this, maybe people that know Salt well.
So there's a setting in the config file that you can put. So if it fails on any syntax check, you can do a fail hard, so it'll fail.
I think it was more like a dry run just to see that everything was.
If you use maps, and then when you run, it's going to ask that after all the syntax checks, it's going to say, I'm going to build these servers. Do you want to proceed? Yes or no? So now you can see it's got the IP. If you go and look at the management console, our instance is right there, building, the size that we specified. Availability zone is the default. It's running, still initializing, it's doing all the checks, and then that's the public DNS. So if you deploy an app using Salt Cloud, so what we could have done is install WordPress, MediaWiki, or anything. So when Salt Cloud deploys a server, tell it to install Nginx or set up Apache or do anything using one of the Salt formulas. So it's doing all the stuff. This is just debug. If you're running, you probably won't run in debug, so you won't see all of that. But it's sort of good to see what it's doing in the background. It's SSHing, it's installing Salt, or so right now it's copying all the scripts. Now it's running the bootstrap script, so it's installing Salt and its dependencies. So that is installing dependencies. It installed the keys, GPG keys automatically for Apple. By default, it uses the Bootstrap script shipped with Salt. If your organization wants to use its own Bootstrap script, so if you have something funky going on, or if the Bootstrap script fails, it doesn't work for you or your organization, you can explicitly specify script in the profile and then specify the path to the script. So when your server comes up, it's going to use that script that you specify. It's more like in OpenStack, what you have as custom script. So came back with success. That's all the information about the instance. As you can see, the key has been accepted automatically. So right now, the minion is not able to contact the master because of the IP tables rules. So I'll have to open port 4505 and 4506 on my server. Okay, it's still not contacting because so Clemson's blocking the external access from Amazon. If I did the same thing in OpenStack, since it was internal network, it would have contacted back. So in your case, if you're in an organization, if you're doing personal development, there won't be a firewall. But if you have your instance in an organization's private network, you probably want to have an external exception for the Amazon instance to be able to contact your master on port 4505 and 4506. So next I'm going to demo how to set it up with OpenStack. I can destroy this instance doing Salt Cloud -d and then specify the name of the instance. So my first instance. And then in the meantime, I'll set up the provider config file for OpenStack. So there's OpenStack. Now I'll again go to the documentation. There's documentation how to set it up with OpenStack. So here it specifies you need libcloud. So we're going to be installing libcloud first. So there it went ahead, deleted the instance. If you go back to your EC2 management console, refresh it, it says shutting down, and then it'll change to terminating. Just install Python libcloud package. Now I can go and set up the config file. So going back to the documentation, copying this stuff. Again, I'm pointing the newly deployed instance to this. So now here's the identity URL that you're going to put. So if you go on your OpenStack, if you log in using your username and then go to the project in which you want to deploy your instance, if you go to access and security, and then go to API access, here you see the endpoints. You want the identity URL. So I'm going to be copying that. And you want to append it with tokens. So we want that. The compute name is going to be, so if you download the OpenStack RC file from here and then source it, and using Nova, you can check what service region you are in or what service endpoint. So I already have it downloaded. From my local desktop, I'm going to be sourcing it. So now I can run Nova endpoints. Comes up with all the Nova endpoints that I have. The name is compute service. So compute name is compute service. Protocol IP version 4. Region, again, we'll have to check what region we are in. So region is region 1. Okay, it's already there. Now the user and password. So the user that has access to that tenant or that project space, I already created a service account for this presentation, so I'm going to be typing a password, and you all can see the password. So that's why I specifically set it up so nobody can use the password. So my user is SaltConf15. Let's type a dummy password. This is the name of my tenant. So as you can see, it's right there. And the provider is going to be OpenStack. Again, here I'll be putting some custom config. So that's the key name. So con15.pem. So the key that I have, I already uploaded the public portion of it. I imported it on my OpenStack dashboard. That's the key name. One thing that the documentation don't mention, I think it's an issue that they have to fix. You have to specify the network, because if you don't specify the network, it doesn't know what network to use, what IPs to use, how to create it. So in order to do that, I'll be specifying two networks. One is fixed, and another is the floating IP. Now we at Clemson, floating IP, we use it from a public pool. It's a pool called public, so I just put a public right there. For fixed IPs, in your project space, you can go to networks, click on the network, and then you can see the ID right there. This is what you put in the fixed network portion. So I'll put that. And that's all I need. So let us run a test. Salt Cloud -- list sizes, OpenStack, SaltConf15. Typo.
We have computer instead of compute.
Oh. Yep, right there. So that's what we provide with OpenStack to our customers. Now we need to set up a profile for this, just like we did for Amazon. So go to profiles.d again, edit the profiles, just like I have for Amazon. I'll create one for OpenStack. The provider is going to be the name of the provider that I put. So it was OpenStack-SaltConf15. Image and the size are going to be what we provide to our customers. So if you go to, in your case, you'll go to your OpenStack instance. You can go to images and snapshots and see what images are available. So you can pick one of them. In our case, we picked Cloud CentOS 6.5 stock. So I'm going to be typing that. Cloud. Sizes that we ship, the lowest one is M1 or tiny. So I'll put that. I'll specify SSH username here. Now you must have noticed that in case of Amazon, I put the SSH username in the provider config. So this is an example to show you that you can do it both ways. If you put it in the profile, it's going to override whatever default you have in the provider. So if most of the images, most of the instances that you deploy, if they use cloud user, then specify it in the provider's config. But if you have an exception, let's say if you want to deploy an Amazon instance that uses EC2 user, then you can specify it right here. So I'll specify cloud user. I'm specifying SSH interface. And then specifying the security group. In case of Amazon, the name of this field was security groups without an underscore. In case of OpenStack, it's got an underscore. So So we are ready. Now we can deploy, so Salt Cloud, use the profile. My OpenStack instance, in debug mode. So we can go to our OpenStack instances page and see that it's deploying right here. We can see the status. So right now it's waiting for a VM IP. It's got the IP. It's trying to get a floating IP. So it's got the floating IP. It's running. It's installing Salt. So till it's doing the background work, I think I'm open for questions if any one of you have any questions. No questions? Whoa. I'm sorry?
Have you done anything with auto-scaling groups?
Not yet. But I think I can, I've done some like development stuff, but haven't tried it like.
Yeah, right now my auto-scaling group is running Salt solo because I've only been using Salt for about 3 weeks.
Okay.
So I haven't had time to figure out how to make it automatically accept the keys with just reactors. Yeah, because I don't want to accept just any random key. I just want keys that are actually part of my ASG.
Okay.
You often use VMware as a cloud provider, like an internal center, or is it all?
So I don't know if you attended the talk yesterday where VMware was talking about the product that they're coming with. They don't have a deadline on it, but we're hoping sometime soon there'll be some integration with VMware. You can use Saltify Provider to deploy bare metal instances or like install Salt on bare metal instances. So you can see the key has been accepted. Came back with a return. So, all right. If you can all go ahead and submit a session feedback, that's my GitHub username. So you can also follow me. Thank you.